He ruled 60 million people. He commanded armies that stretched from Britain to Mesopotamia. He held the kind of power that history has only given to a handful of human beings. And yet, every single night, in the privacy of his own tent or chamber, Marcus Aurelius wrote the same kinds of reminders to himself. Don't lash out in anger. Don't waste money on things that don't serve your character. Don't let the thoughts in your head spiral out of your control. Speak less, meaning more. Here was a man who could have anything, and he spent his life disciplining himself to want only what was necessary. That's the paradox at the heart of Stoic philosophy, and it's the secret that most people never discover. The person with the most control over themselves is the freest person alive. Not the richest, not the most powerful, the most self-governed. Today, we're going to go deep on what Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics knew about the 4 pillars of personal mastery: your mouth, your mood, your money, and your mind. These are not separate problems. They are 4 expressions of the same root challenge: the discipline of your inner world. If this kind of wisdom is what you're here for, make sure you're subscribed. Drop a comment right now telling me which of the 4 you struggle with the most, whether it's your mouth, your mood, your money, or your mind. And drop these words into the comments. I am the master of my inner world. Let me know you're in this with me. Let's begin. 1. Your mouth. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that most people overlook, buried in Book 8 of his Meditations. Confine yourself to the present. At first, that sounds like advice about anxiety. But in context, he was talking about speech. He was reminding himself to only speak to what is real, what is true, what is present, and to stop his tongue before impulse could outrun wisdom. The Stoics called speech logos, the faculty of reason made audible, and they believed that every word we speak is a declaration of character. Not because words are magical, but because your mouth is the exit point of your inner world. What comes out of it tells the truth about what's happening inside. Think about this. How many times have you said something in anger that you didn't mean? And how many seconds did it take for you to wish you could take it back? The damage from a careless sentence can last years. Sometimes it's irreversible. Epictetus, who spent the first years of his life as an enslaved man, said this: "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." He wasn't being clever. He was pointing at a practice. Before you speak, take in what is actually happening. Before you respond, process. Before your words leave your body, let your reason review them. Here is the practice Marcus Aurelius actually used. He called it the pause. Not a hesitation, not timidity, but a deliberate moment of alignment between what he thought and what he said. In his Meditations, he wrote, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" 3 words. Is this necessary? Apply them to your speech, and watch how much of what you were about to say simply falls away. When you control your mouth, you become someone worth listening to. People trust silence. People respect measured words. In a world flooded with noise, the person who speaks with intention carries enormous influence. Not because they talk the most, but because when they speak, it counts. For the next 7 days, before you respond to anything emotionally charged, a conflict, a criticism, a temptation to gossip, take 3 silent breaths. In the first breath, notice what you're feeling. Secondly, ask yourself what is actually true. In the third, ask, will these words build or destroy? You will be amazed by how different you sound and how much better others hear you. 2. Your mood. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote those words almost 2,000 years ago. Most people read that and nod. Very few people actually live it. Because here's what living it actually looks like. Someone says something that offends you. The offense is real. The pain might be real. And your mood begins to shift toward anger, or hurt, or resentment. That shift feels completely automatic. It feels like something that is happening to you, not something you are doing. The Stoics called this the impression, the automatic emotional reaction that rises in response to events. And they taught that between the impression and your actual response, there is a space, a gap. And in that gap lives your freedom. Marcus Aurelius called the seat of this freedom the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty, your commanding self. It is the part of you that can observe your emotions without being hijacked by them. It is the part that can say, yes, I feel angry right now. What will I do with that anger? This is not about suppressing your feelings. Stoicism is often misread this way, as if being stoic means feeling nothing. That is not the teaching. The Stoics experienced joy, grief, love, and frustration just as fully as anyone. The difference was that they did not let their mood become their master. Here is the distinction that will change everything for you. An emotion is information. A mood hijack is a choice. When something upsets you, and you let that upset dictate your behavior for the rest of the day, you have allowed your mood to govern you. When you feel the same upset, acknowledge it, process it, and return to your core self. That is mastery. Marcus Aurelius was managing one of the worst plagues in Roman history, the Antonine Plague, which killed millions across the empire. He was simultaneously fighting wars on the northern frontier, navigating political betrayal inside the palace, and grieving the deaths of his own children. And still, every night, he wrote. He processed. He returned to his philosophy. He refused to let the chaos outside become the chaos inside. You don't have to face a plague, but you face something every single day that tests your emotional sovereignty. The question is whether you will respond from your values or react from your mood. One practice. At the end of each day, spend 5 minutes reviewing your emotional responses, not to judge yourself, but to observe. Where did the gap close too fast? Where did you let an impression become an automatic reaction? What would the commanding self have done instead? This is the daily audit of mood mastery. Do it consistently, and your baseline emotional response to difficulty will shift fundamentally within months. 3. Your money. Seneca wrote this to his friend Lucilius. It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the man who hankers after more. Read that again slowly. It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the man who hankers after more. This is perhaps the most misunderstood area of Stoic teaching, because people assume that Stoicism means rejecting wealth, living simply for the sake of asceticism, turning your back on ambition. That is not what the Stoics taught. Marcus Aurelius was wealthy beyond imagination. Seneca was one of the richest men in Rome. They did not teach that money is evil. They taught something far more precise and far more radical. Money must be your servant, not your sovereign. The moment you let financial anxiety drive your decisions, the moment you spend to soothe emotions, to signal status, or to fill an internal emptiness, you have lost the real wealth, which is peace of mind. Think about your own relationship with money. Not the numbers, but the feeling. How much of your spending is chosen and how much is reactive? How many purchases do you make in response to stress, boredom, or the desire to look a certain way to other people? How much of your financial anxiety comes from real scarcity, and how much comes from comparing your situation to people you don't actually know? The Stoics introduced a practice called negative visualization, voluntarily imagining what life would be like if you lost what you have, not to cultivate fear, but to break the grip of desire. When you genuinely contemplate living without what you take for granted, two things happen. First, gratitude floods in. Second, you realize how little of what you think you need is actually necessary. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this in the context of his own palace life. Confine yourself to what you need and what nature provides. He wasn't condemning the palace. He was refusing to let the palace define him. Here is your money practice. Before every non-essential purchase, ask 3 questions. Is this consistent with my values? Am I buying this from a place of choice or from a place of anxiety, boredom, or comparison? And will I care about this in 6 months? These 3 questions will not make you frugal, they will make you free. Because when you spend from values and not from impulse, money becomes a tool for the life you actually want, rather than the source of the stress you're always trying to escape. 4. Your mind. In the Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." That is not a metaphor. It is a neurological fact dressed in ancient language. What you consistently direct your attention to shapes the architecture of your thinking. It shapes what you notice, what you fear, what you hope for, and ultimately, who you become. The Stoics built their entire philosophical system around a single foundational distinction: the difference between what is up to us and what is not. Epictetus called this the dichotomy of control, and it is perhaps the single most powerful cognitive tool in the history of philosophy. What is up to us? Our judgments, our intentions, our desires, our responses. What is not up to us? Everything is external. Other people's opinions, the economy, the behavior of those around us, events in the world. When you train your mind to consistently sort your attention into these 2 columns, what I control and what I don't, something remarkable happens. The category of things you're anxious about shrinks dramatically. Because most anxiety is the result of directing mental energy at things that are outside your control. We worry about what other people think. We fear outcomes we can't determine. We rehearse catastrophes that may never arrive. all of this is the mind without direction. The directed mind looks different. It asks, when facing any situation, what is mine to do here? What is within my reach? Where can I apply genuine effort? And it releases, with discipline, the rest. This doesn't mean indifference. Marcus Aurelius fought as hard as any general who ever lived for outcomes he cared deeply about. But he fought for the effort, not for the certainty of the result. He directed his mind to what he could actually influence, and then let the outcome be what it would be. Here is a practice you can begin today. When something is weighing on you, a relationship problem, a financial worry, a conflict at work, take a sheet of paper and draw 2 columns. In the first column, write everything about this situation that is within your direct control. In the second, write everything that is not. Then put everything from the second column down. Not forever, just for today, and focus entirely on the first column. You will feel the difference immediately. The mind, freed from what it cannot control, becomes remarkably clear and capable. It starts solving problems instead of circling them. It starts seeing options where it previously saw only walls. Now here is what the Stoics understood, that most modern self-help misses entirely. These 4 areas are not separate disciplines. They are one. When you master your mouth, you build the internal authority to master your mood. When you master your mood, you gain the clarity to master your money. When you master your money, you relieve the anxiety that clouds your mind. And when you master your mind, the right words, the right emotional responses, and the right financial decisions flow from you naturally. Marcus Aurelius did not sit down each day and say, "Today I will work on mouth, tomorrow mood." He worked on himself as a unified whole. The meditations are not 4 separate books. They are one man's daily practice of becoming consistent in word, emotion, resources, and thought. And here is what I want you to hold on to as you go from this video today. Mastery in these 4 areas is not a destination you arrive at and then rest. It is a practice you engage in every day, in the small choices no one else sees. The word you chose not to say in a heated moment. The emotion you sat with instead of acting out. The purchase you didn't make because it didn't align with your values. The thought you redirected before it could spiral. These are not small victories. They are the currency of real freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, near the final pages of his Meditations, "Perfection of character is this, to live each day as if it were your last, without frenzy, without apathy, without pretense." Not perfect, not finished, just present, intentional, and fully yourself in each moment. That is what mastery of the mouth, the mood, the money, and the mind actually looks like. Not a peak you climb once and stand on, a path you walk every day with greater steadiness. 6 months from now, you will be someone. The only question is whether that someone will be shaped by your choices or by your defaults, by your wisdom or your impulses, by your values or by the noise of the world around you. The Stoics believed you were born with everything you need to make the better choice. Not someday, now. If this video gave you something real, hit that like button. Share it with one person who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next on this channel. and drop your commitment in the comments. I am the master of my inner world. Your journey to mastery doesn't begin tomorrow. It begins the moment you decide it does.